Are you in a position where you're defined by your age, and that's limiting you to pursue a dream or goal you want to accomplish? The More Than Your Age podcast is about having conversations with women who fully live their lives without being dictated or defined by their age. This is a space to encourage women who feel blocked to pursue a dream or goal based on their life circumstances. Welcome to the More Than Your Age podcast. I am your host, Erica Pasvar. Let's start living life fully and become more than your age. Joining me today on the More Than Your Age podcast is certified portrait photographer and creator and founder of the Grapevine Edit, Laura Kellerman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. Laura, you and I, we found out recently that we both have a mutual connection who is your cousin, Mackenzie. I messaged her right after I saw you and she's like, oh, who? And she mentioned another cousin. And I said, no, Laura. She goes, oh, yeah, my other business owning cousin. Of course. So she and I think I mentioned this to you, she and I served with the student ministries together like 8 or 9 years ago at my former church. I think she's still there. So I just love how we discovered this because I didn't even know that beforehand. But I found out about you through your Grapevine Edit Instagram account, I think a couple of years ago. When you were first started, a friend had showed me what you were doing. And I think at the time too, so the year might be off, but at the time you had about 12,000. And then I just looked up recently and you have over 200,000 people who are following along of what you're doing, which is completely phenomenal and fascinating. Just what you have done. You have become the go-to for the listeners who are not. So Laura and I are in the same area. We're in Grapevine, which is a suburb of Dallas-Fort Worth. And it is a small town, but there's a good amount of people and a lot of people know what's going on. And so, Laura, you have really become the go-to resource for all things related to our local town of Grapevine, Texas. And it's just really cool.
Wild.
I bet it is wild. I know, and I can't wait to hear all about it. And so it's just really cool to see somebody creating something for a place that you love to promote small businesses. And now you've become the reliable news source for this town. So we're going to get to that. But before that, you and your husband, so you're married, you have a daughter, you grew up in North Texas,
Correct.
You moved around a little bit, UNT, Shreveport, North Texas, Abilene, Little Rock, and now you're back here in Grapevine. So tell us kind of how you landed all those places. You were in Little Rock for the lengthiest amount of time. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I grew up just outside of Dallas. My husband grew up in the next door suburb, just outside of Fort Worth, and we met each other at University of North Texas. And he's a big achiever. Like he is the get it done, don't waste time. And I'm like the more la dreamer, like don't really take initiative. And when we graduated college, he was like, we got to get jobs. And we were sending out tapes, which was VHS tapes to local television stations. Both of us wanted to go into news producing. So that's basically writing the news show. So we're putting the words in the teleprompter for the anchor to read. So you're putting everything in order, et cetera. So that was both of our careers. And we ended up in Shreveport, which is only 3 hours from Dallas. And we were in our early 20s. And then in the news business, you can advance your career either by being promoted where you are or by moving to a new market, a different market size. Or, you can move to a smaller market to get a better job. You can move to a bigger market to take a smaller job to advance your career, whatever. So my husband and I ended up working in the Dallas TV market, which is it was home for us. And it's the fifth largest at the time, I guess. It was the fifth largest market in the country. And I was like, cool, I'm here. I'm good. We made it. I'm here to stay. And then, but he really wanted to get into management. So we moved to Abilene, Texas, which was like the 200 and something-ish market in the country. So it was a little bit of an adjustment to go to such a small area. And that's where we adopted our daughter from. We had been married, I don't know, 5 or 6 years or something, and just weren't able to have kids. And that's why we ended up in Abilene. I am 100% sure that the only
Wow.
reason that we went to this small town and paid our dues for 3 years there was so that we could meet her and get her and bring her with us.
Oh.
So then we moved to Little Rock and we were there and loved it and put down roots. I was no longer in news now that my husband was in a management role, which was fine with me. I didn't really love like the smaller market style. We spent 7 years there and then we ended up back in Grapevine so that he could work for his company's corporate office, which was sort of the ultimate goal. And both of our families are here. And so that's kind of the geography of where our lives have gone. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
a little complicated of a story.
That's so interesting. So I'm curious to know too, when you both ended up in Shreveport, did you both land a job at the same place or two different locations, or kind of how did that end up working out for y'all?
Same place. So he got offered a producing job. I went along for the ride and I applied for a job that the station had, which I remember very clearly paid $6 an hour. And here I am with my college degree. But what am I going to do? I got to get my foot in the door or whatever.
Yeah.
And I wasn't married to working in news, but I really wanted to. I was interested in it. And so I operated the graphics on the morning show from 5 to 7 a.m., which was clicking a button. I hated every minute of it, but I loved the people I worked with. So that was great. But I absolutely hated that job. And eventually the news director had an opening for a producing job. And so I became the morning show producer. My husband was doing like the 6 or the 10 o'clock news. I don't remember. We sort of went back and forth. We were only there for 2 years, but yes, we worked together. So that was a challenge for sure, working alongside my spouse. Cause again, he's just much more like goal oriented and achievement. I was just happy doing it. It was a creative job. I think I'm a pretty good writer. It was a good fit, but I wasn't looking at the numbers, like seeing, what the lead was on the other station the night before. I just didn't care about it. And so, yeah, I sort of just took a back seat as far as that kind of thing goes. But yeah, we were each other's fill-in also because there's only, I don't know, 5 or something producers at a station, especially in a market that size. So we couldn't take vacation at the same time.
Oh.
So we also couldn't really have any sort of like weird, untoward banter or anything. Like we were one of the only couples, I think, at this station, at least that were in the same role or in the same department. And so we kind of had to develop this sort of like frat boy banter with each other, which has never gone away. And I blame it on having to be coworkers for the first 2 years of our marriage. So yeah, but it was good. We paid our dues and then we moved on.
So I'm assuming in TV production and like in that sector that you were in, just similar to radio as well, you kind of have to like start at the bottom and then you work your
For
way.
sure.
I mean, I guess with any type of job, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's hard. But you know what? We met in producing class in college, and our teacher was amazing. We're still friends with her. And she told us that if we wanted to go into television producing, to local news producing,
Mm-hmm.
really we needed to treat that first market as graduate school. The perk was that we were getting a paycheck instead of graduate school you have to pay for, but it still stinks. The way that graduate school stinks, you're still not getting to go out and do all the fun stuff that you would be able to do, but you really got to buckle down, pay your dues, stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get out of your contract early, and then, put it in your rearview mirror and it will benefit you greatly. And so we took that advice. I'm so glad she told us that because I had a lot of colleagues and stuff who kind of didn't really receive that guidance and they gave up early. I mean, we ate Thanksgiving dinner at the Bossier City, whatever, Horseshoe Casino for a couple years just because we had to go right back to work.
Mm-hmm.
We worked on Christmas. We just had to pay our dues, but we knew it was temporary and we knew that it would benefit our careers the way that graduate school would benefit your career.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When you would do the TV producing, like your specific role, even there and then in Abilene, what when you hear producing, I feel like that can look like a lot of different ways. So what did that look like? I know it was probably different every day too, but what did that look like for you in those beginning stages and as you moved up?
Gosh, so I didn't produce in Abilene, but so in Shreveport, it was the morning show which was where I started. You get in at 10:30 at night when everybody at the 10 o'clock news is leaving their shift for the day. They kind of do a little handoff, tell you anything that's important that's going on overnight. And in a market that size, you're one of a couple people in the building. And so you're listening to the police scanners, you're making beat calls, which is calling every sheriff's department, every police department in the in the market
Hmm.
area, and just hoping that something happened, of interest, hoping that nobody got hurt, but hoping that something interesting happened because you have to fill 2 hours of time. And
Wow.
so we would have really boring stuff on our show, honestly, because you just gotta fill it. But so it's the producer's job to work in the commercial breaks.
Hmm.
And so your break has to last a certain amount of time. And what do you fill that with? How does it go? How much time does weather get? Is there any, like significant weather takes a little longer? The meteorologist could fill a little more time, which was nice. We would have to put in like international news, which doesn't do great on a local morning show, but just with those limited resources, we had to put in that kind of thing to fill the time. I know this sounds terrible, and all of my colleagues, including my husband, would kill me for admitting this, but it's true. It was sort of a survival to just get the show to fill all the time that we needed it to fill.
Wow, that's so interesting. Just things that you don't think of when you're not in it, You're just watching it.
Right. Well, and then moving to Dallas, so now we're in a huge television market with tons of suburbs and there's just so much stuff going on, which
Yeah.
ties into the Grapevine edit. I'll have to talk about that later. There's just so much stuff going on that it wasn't hard to fill the time. So now you can really get creative with producing, like what stories go together, what editorial decisions I had to stand up to managing editor one time of, if you make me put this in my show, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I will not write it. Like
Yeah.
you get to have those conversations because there's enough time, enough content to fill the time. And so it was just a much more exciting, the staff was quite large, it was just like you could craft something together more than slopping something together in the larger market. But they say nothing changes but the call letters, which is true. You have the same problems everywhere you go, but it's a fun career.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Like you're on your toes constantly
Yeah,
and
for
trying to
sure.
just make it work and happen. So, okay. Then we talked about Abilene and you adopted your sweet daughter and then you guys landed in Little Rock. And I want to know at some point, you did decide to pursue photography and you do have a unique approach to your photography where, as you state on your website, you say, it's my number one goal to create artwork for you that even after years still makes you stop and stare. You create art that doesn't hide in a Facebook post or in a thumbnail that is hard to find. You marry your journalism background with the art of photography. And it's quite beautiful. It definitely is very artistic. And
Thank
even
you.
before I reached out to you to want to interview you, I would see your stuff and I'm like, I gotta save up for Laura. Your work is, it is absolutely beautiful. It is very
Thank
artistic. And
you.
so you shared with me too, you're very passionate about the way that you structure your photography business compared to others. So what made you decide to create your art in this way?
I guess I had always been interested in photography, more interested in looking at it and not necessarily creating it for myself. I just didn't, even videography, I wasn't really interested in, I was around videographers all day, every day at my job, but I don't know. I think it was right before our daughter was born that I decided, okay, I'm going to get a DSLR so that the pictures that I do take are going to be prettier than the ones I'm taking with my, point and shoot camera. And it just the technology of it, it just unlocked this interest in me of creating pretty photographs. And so I would go to people at work and like, hey, will you like stand in front of me? I wanted to like create a scene with people. I'm not interested, never really have been in like landscape or architecture or anything that doesn't have a face in it. I really like to have eyes in my pictures. Pets are fine. It just has to be like something living, breathing. And so I just did it as a hobby. And then a couple of people started, giving me $25 as a thank you for coming to their house and taking their Christmas card picture and stuff like that. And then I started charging people a little bit. And, at the time, blogging was really, really popular. And so it
Mhm.
was really easy to access inspiration. And it wasn't as interactive as social media is now. And it wasn't so much as scrolling as Pinterest is. It was its own unique, the people who were around for that era it was its own thing. You were just connected with different blogs. And so I could put my, I guess I wouldn't have called it artwork back then, but I could put my artwork out there and write about it in a way that was sort of like a little bit of an archive of my work, which was cool and a little cringy. I mean, I would hate for anyone to go find my old blog. It's the pictures are terrible, but it's a process. It's a learning
Yeah.
process. And then when we moved to Little Rock, well, now I'm a stay-at-home mom. Now I have a 9-month-old. Now I'm in a new city, and I gotta do something creative. I need a creative outlet. I need to meet people. So I opened a business, and I wasn't charging. I don't know what I was charging, but it was not enough. And never people severely underestimate the cost of doing business. They don't just calculate
Yeah.
the cost of doing business in photography very well. And so it's sort of a mindset of let me make as much as I've spent. Let me make sure that I'm not spending more on camera gear or on web hosting or hard drives or CDs. I'd have to drive to Office Depot and buy my CDs so that I could burn them for my clients and decorate them and whatever. And I was just making sure that I was at least charging more than I was spending. And that's a terrible business model. I mean, I didn't have a business model. I just had a hobby that I was charging for. And so I've learned a lot of mistakes along the way that way. And I get a little cringy when I see how many people are just, charging nothing for, and they're good. They're good photographers and they're just not charging enough, which makes it hard for some of us. But then it's also like, you're worth more. These pictures are beautiful. Anyway, so when we were in Little Rock, I reached out to a photographer that had a beautiful website. The pictures on her website were amazing. And I said, if you ever want me to, or if you ever need somebody to follow you at a wedding, I'll do it for free. And she said, I have a wedding coming up this weekend. My second shooter would like to not work. So if you'd like to come, you can come. I went and worked for her for that weekend, and it developed into a relationship. And it took a few years for us for her to ask me to come on more full time. And so I just worked for her photography business. I still had my own on the side, and I was still doing things that weren't competing with hers. I did a lot of sessions for adoptive families through a network so they could come to me for pictures of their new family configuration, whatever that looked like. A lot of courthouse adoption ceremonies. That was really fun. And then, I started working for her. And at one point, this was in 2017, it was like, we can't really grow from here. There were now 3 of us working for her studio. And like, how are you going to grow from here? Like, we can't, charging more is going to turn people away. So, okay, so let's offer fewer photos. Before it was like, oh, here's 60 beautiful images. Well, does anybody need 60 images? No, you probably love 10 of them. The rest of it are just kind of noise, or they're redundant, or they're really not as good if you're looking at it with a critical eye. So we're going to deliver 20 pictures. We're going to increase our price, and they only get 20. And so we're going to save time, and we're going to make a little bit more money. That was our goal. And then later in 2017, we were like, we have to sell these photographs. There's no way for us to grow as artists. There's no way for us to grow financially, like in our income, if we don't start charging for each photograph and only selling the ones that the people love to them. And so we spent the whole months and months and months kind of developing, what are we going to offer? How are we going to price this? How are we going to help the people select which images they want? And it was really collaborative. And she was really awesome in having these big ideas and then bringing us together to implement. It was just really a fun time. So in 2017, we started charging a lower session fee and then going to people's homes we had at the time printed proofs that were beautiful, and we would lay them out on their dining room table and say, would you like to purchase these, or would you like to purchase anything else on this list? And a lot of people had sticker shock, which was hard because they were not new clients. They were clients who were used to something else. But we really just immediately started to see the value in people want something tangible to hand down to their kids. I mean, my daughter's 14. I wouldn't be able to pull up her baby Pictures. I mean, it would take me some time to I know where the physical copies are, but I don't know where the digital copies are. And if I never made a physical copy of it, I have no idea. And so, I also immediately became a better photographer because here I am sitting next to someone going, oh, I don't really like that. Or why is there so much sky in that picture? Well, why? I'm never going to take a picture like that again. If nobody's buying these pictures that have a bunch of sky or whatever it was, I'm getting feedback instead of they get an email with their download link and then you never hear from them again until it's time for more pictures next year. And so it was just a game. It was like a video, you know, it was like, here's what I can create. And then here's what people love. And now I'm going to try to replicate that. And then I'm going to try to do this. And so there was no looking back. I mean, there were so many pain points and like, how do we process these orders and who delivers them and how do we package them? And, you know, how do we make sure, how do we measure a wall properly to make sure that this gallery wall is going to fit within the confines of their trim? And it, you know, but it's so fun. And so then when we moved back to North Texas, I opened my business, like just copy paste. We
Yeah.
put all that work into figuring that out. I'm just going to do it with my own business here. So
When you were saying that the original clients would, they were used to one way of the photography with the just like the set pricing and all these images. And then when there was this new shift to, okay, well, now we are just going to charge like a smaller sitting fee, but then you get to see your images and then you get to pick and choose and purchase that. When there was that first shell shock, did you find that there was some drop off in customers or clients, or because they were able to appreciate and see the artistic value in it, that they kept coming back over and over again? Kind of what did you see initially when you guys unraveled that new plan?
yeah, both. That's so interesting because it's both. So most people, because we started getting on the phone, like I'm going to talk to you about, hey, if you could have a picture above your fireplace, what would it look like? Would it
Hmm.
be black and white? Would hair be blowing? Would it be candid? Would it be everybody perfectly sitting facing the camera smiling? Like, what do you want? And so we would have those phone conversations first. And so if people were like, I really don't want that, then they didn't book us. Most people, it's been a long time. It's been, I guess, 8 or 9 years, 8 years, I guess. But most people gave it a shot. And so there was still some sticker shock because we didn't
Hmm.
do a great job educating necessarily. So we learned a lot of like, you've got to be completely upfront with pricing beforehand, which can be really overwhelming for people. I deal with it all the time of like, even if you show people, I usually say, wait and see your picture, like get a budget in mind or whatever however your family works, wait and see your pictures. And then I'll help you make your decision based
Hmm.
on the pictures and not on your whatever expectations are a little more arbitrary. Yeah, so we had a lot of people that started gallery walls. And so they were like, okay, so after 3 years, I want to have, and there are like templates of sizes and stuff. Okay, so I'm pregnant, so I want to do this one for maternity, and then I want this one to be the newborn picture, and then I want this one. And so there was a lot of like growth of people who loved the process and bought into it, and then drop off of people who it wasn't for them. And that,
Hmm.
it was hard, but it's completely understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that it was interesting. We saw both things happen.
Did you also find too, because, okay, well, from a lot of the photographers that I've seen or have looked at, their process is kind of the way that was being that you were doing previously, where it's just, okay, set B, you get X amount of pictures, and there we go. And so the way that what you're doing, I don't feel like a lot of people are doing it. And I know you're in the industry, so you might know a little bit more than I would with that. But would you see that people would start implementing that, or that's a lot of extra work and extra time? Like it's a lot easier to just do the generic, hey, this is how much it
Hmm.
is. Kind of what would you see with that and with the people in in your industry?
Yeah, so I mean, it requires 100% buy-in. You can't do it one way and then go back and do it the other way, right? So
Hmm.
it's scary and it was really frustrating a lot of times. And unless somebody is ready to make a change because really they realize they've taken no salary for 3 years or something, like unless somebody's ready to make a change or
Yeah.
they started out that way to begin with, because it's the old school way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really hard to convince people, but you make more money and you're working less or the same amount, or it looks different. It's not
Hmm.
taking, I think in Little Rock, I was doing 4 to 5 shoots a week, kind of on average. And most of that was sunset hours. So that means evenings, which
Hmm.
when you're home with a child, like a preschooler all day long, yeah, my evening activity is to get out and go to work and do this artistic thing that I love. But once my daughter reached school age, well, that's taking away from family time
Yeah.
and weekends and stuff like that. And so, if that time can be spent during the day processing orders and printing and putting the final touches on editing and really being more careful about the retouching, because now it's going to go on a wall. So now the stray
Hmm.
hair is a lot more noticeable than it is on the screen. And so, or I'm not delivering 70 photos to somebody, so I can really take my time with the 5 that they love to make sure that there's nothing distracting in the background or whatever if I missed it in camera. I forgot what your question started as.
It was just more of like, did you see that the people in your industry, were they kind of mimicking that type of business or not, because of the way you're doing it is very intricate?
Yeah, I think it's more a matter of it's pretty easy to pick up a camera and go into business for
Mhm.
photography. You do not need a license, you do not need certification. It's really popular among people like me who maybe have a spouse whose job picks them up and moves, because really all you need is a business license and a tax ID in your new state if you move.
Mhm.
You don't need to go through, it's not like teaching or something. So it's pretty easy for people to pick up a camera and charge money for it. And that people, they can be very, very talented. They can have a great eye and be really good at it. And that's pretty self-explanatory. I have Google Drive. So, I have my camera, I take my pictures, I have my editing software, I have Google Drive. There's not really any reason to look for a different business model unless you're sort of networking with other photographers to know that there's a lot of resources out there for those who do. I don't know if it's universally known, but what we sort of like took training in and stuff was called IPS, in-person sales. And that doesn't even mean that you're selling. I mean, you could say, hey, I'm a photographer. I only offer digital pictures, but come in so I can help you select which 20 you want.
Mhm.
So it's an in-person sale. And so it's customer service. You're really
Mhm.
giving people what they want instead of giving them like more decisions to make. Here's an email with a bunch of decisions to make of what you're going to do with this thing. So it doesn't have to be physical products or framing or everybody can do it the way they want. But I really wish more photographers would explore in-person sales, even without
Mhm.
changing their business model, just to explore the idea of having their clients face to face when it's time to deliver the images. I would encourage anybody to do that.
Yeah, yeah. This is a very smart business model for photography. I could definitely see how that's where additional, more money would be coming in. And not yes, that's your business and you want to make money, but then also like that gives you, like you said, the customer service and that personal relationship with, like, you're not just taking the picture and then you're done. You're continuing that face to face is really important. Okay, well, so we're gonna jump forward to when you and your husband and your daughter moved to the Grapevine area in 2019, and so you left your business in Little Rock, which is very hard.
With
What
my
were your
girls that I worked with, yeah, that was
yes?
that was very hard. Yeah.
So DFW is a big photography market
Huge,
period. Yes. So what were
huge.
your
Yeah.
plans to create your new business here in a new market surrounded by all these other photographers?
Yeah, it's really saturated here. It's pretty different than Arkansas. I We moved here in 2019 and it was a really stressful move, as anybody uprooting their lives, has gone through,
Yeah.
I'm sure. And so I took a vacation by myself. I think my husband took my daughter they did something, a staycation or something. And I went to New Mexico and took my laptop and I built my website and I got my business license. I just kind of did a lot of the housekeeping and then I took a lot of courses, refreshed a lot of courses about just business structure and, how to calculate your cost of doing business. I just kind of refreshed a bunch of stuff because I'm now the owner. I'm not along for the ride.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for everything now. Before I still had my own side business in Little Rock, but I wasn't doing in-person sales. It was just a little more, stuff here and there. So fall of 2019, I kind of worked to get my business off the ground. Didn't really market at all. I did a few sessions for people who knew that I had finally moved back and they could use me because they've been seeing my work, or, it's all people that I knew.
Yeah.
And then I waited for the spring of 2020 to go with a full launch
Perfect timing.
with bluebonnet season. That was kind of the first thing, which is sort of Easter. So that was kind of the first thing that I really started marketing. So I had already launched my website. I was already taking business, but I wasn't putting myself out there except for bluebonnet season, and then had to cancel everything that I had booked. And so it was kind of it was weird for all of us. And I'm very privileged that this income of my business my family wasn't dependent on this income. And so it's completely different for other people in all kinds of different situations. But in this situation, it wasn't critical that I launched my business, luckily. So I kind of took my time with it. And that fall, I went back to Little Rock and took a bunch of clients they were feeling pinched, having me gone, couldn't handle the load of clientele that they had there. So I was able to kind of like limp along. And then in the spring of 2021, or maybe like January or something, I have this patio on my porch that's enclosed on three sides. And so it was just like, I'm just going to do an open air studio because nobody's going to each other's houses.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did a model call and just said, it's just for me. It's just my creative. I get to decide what it looks like, whatever, but I'm going to do tween boys. So I did a model call for tween boys. Why? Because that's real hard. Like tween boys are real hard to photograph. I was also having worked for Lindsay Sullivan Photography in Little Rock. I was shooting in her style, which was beautiful. I loved her style. It was beautiful. You could show somebody our pictures and hopefully, I hope she would agree with me. People couldn't tell who had taken it, which was a lot of like open air backlighting, tree, like lighting filtering through trees, we just had a style. So then I was like, well, what's my style?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really know what my style is. And so this model call was like, I'm just going to play. I'm just going to play with my style and see what it was. So I had, I think 3 or 4 or 5 boys come and I just tried different things. And I set up a backdrop on my patio, which had beautiful light. I also used strobes, but mixed with natural light, and did some really cool stuff that I'm really proud of. And it sort of, number one, gave me some marketing material that I didn't have before. And number two, just kind of like allowed me to get that creative itch scratched in that time where business was just not big because of COVID and moving and all that stuff. And then in spring of 2022, it's all blurring, but 2022 was like, this is my year that I'm going to have a studio.
Mm-hmm.
I had named my business Laura Kellerman Studio. I had hired a graphic designer who's my friend to make my logo. And people would say, oh, where's your studio? It comes to you. It's in my car. Like my studio is wherever you are, however I'd sold it, I don't remember, but I knew I wanted a physical space. And so I just put that into the title of it. And I also have had a Laura Kellerman Photography in Arkansas, and I just wanted a complete rebrand because it wasn't the same thing. So I started looking in 2022 for a physical space, found one on Main Street in Grapevine. It's right off, the address is not Main Street, but our little Grapevine corridor, we're right at the mouth of DFW Airport. So it's like as big of metropolitan area as you can get, but somehow we have this quaint little like small town right in the middle of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Grapevine Main Street is adorable and charming and friendly and casual, and it's just a cool place. And so I found a place there, and my husband was like, okay, now we have a lot of overhead. And so I had to create a business plan to compensate for this very large amount of rent that I had never had before. And it was working. I was doing pretty well. And then that summer he was like, hey, what if we started an Instagram account? Because I wouldn't let him do any marketing for me. I was like, we've worked together before. It just stresses me out a little bit. So he said, what if we started an Instagram account of things to do in Grapevine? And one of the things to do in Grapevine is you got to go get pictures taken at Laura Kellerman Studio. So we would use this as, to get followers to be a part of the community. It was also part of the plan of kind of this oversaturation of photographers. Well, I'll just be the Grapevine photographer. I'm not going to try to drive I was driving to Dallas and Fort. I was trying to advertise everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just it's not sustainable, but it's also like, if I can't niche in my genre, because I mean portraits, but it's not like I'm doing black and white tweens or, what I really have a hard time choosing, like, I only do high school seniors or something. I have a very hard time narrowing it down like that. So I'll just only work in Grapevine. Of course, I travel elsewhere and my clients are kind of all over this area, but mostly Northwest Tarrant County.
Mm-hmm.
Or are we Northeast? We're Northeast, Northeast Tarrant County. Anyway, so I'm just going to hyper localize and that'll be how I grow my business. And so my husband said, let's do this account. And it's going to be kind of like, I'm sure every metropolitan area has one, but it's like the Dallas Love List or the Fort Worth Love List or Dallas Sites 101 or, just these accounts, these Instagram accounts that are like kind of tourism, fun things to do in your town. And so I said, yeah, cool. Sounds great. Well, I'm married to the Energizer Bunny. And the next thing I know, he has taken an entire week off of work, of his job.
Wow.
And he has lined up for me Thank you. He has lined up meetings with not meetings, but like, hey, can we pop in with every business up and down Main Street that would be a business that consumers would go to, the
Yeah.
wineries, the art galleries, the whatever. So we kind of pounded the pavement for an entire week in July. And I think that was his way of like helping market my business so that I could be successful to handle the overhead that I had now taken on. So that's kind of how it started. And people in Grapevine are just really cool and really casual. I mean, they just don't, nobody's suspicious. It's just like a cool, friendly town. And so people are like, yeah, come on in. Like, it's just one of those places. And so between the two of us that week, we shot a couple months worth of content. And I just put together a content calendar
Hmm.
and okay, this is going to get posted. And it kind of got us almost towards Christmas, or at least
Oh,
towards,
wow.
there's a lot of Grapevine stuff. Grapevine's like the Christmas capital of Texas. So then a whole new batch of content came. And then I was able to slide my business advertisement in here and there. And yeah, that's kind of how that was born.
Wow. That is really fascinating. One, I love that your husband took an entire week off to help you because I mean, yes, the overhead, but also just, supporting you and seeing the success of what you can do. And with this idea of like, okay, well, we can both benefit from this. Where we can get to know all these businesses up and down Main Street and help promote them while also promoting your business too. Did you
Yeah,
also?
introducing myself as a new neighbor kind of too
Yeah.
it was a really good excuse of like, hey, what can I do for your business? What can I tell people about that's cool to eat here? By the way,
Hmm.
here's my card, so it was yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah. Now, when you also were having these meetings, was it strictly just to getting to know them, finding out information so that you could promote it? Or were you also thinking, oh, I would love to photograph your business or your employees? Or was that not even something you thought about?
That's always in the back of my mind every time I meet anyone. I'm not bold enough necessarily to pitch right away without a relationship, which isn't a bad thing. That's just how I am. Yes. I don't, so long ago, I don't exactly remember, but for sure, like I could do headshot because I was trying to think of all these different ways of revenue that I didn't do before, but now I can because I have a physical studio space. So maybe like I've had different ideas that I haven't executed, but like maybe I'll offer one day a month where people can bring their products from their gift shop and I'll set up, cool lighting and stuff and they can do their own photographs, but I've helped them with, or whatever. So I was
Hmm.
thinking of like I didn't have a lot of solid plans, but I was sure thinking of like how can we use this relationship with these other businesses to help each other. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
When when you first started out with the Grapevine Edit and you're meeting with these businesses and you said you got all this content to kind of last you through Christmas time, were you thinking like this is going to be huge or were you
No,
thinking Yeah, what were you thinking at the beginning stages?
I don't know. I think I thought every follower was an eyeball for an advertisement for my business. And then also just, I mean, the whole community over competition concept has always been pretty important to me of like,
Yeah.
what's the expression of like ships rise, like high waters rise all ships or something like that. Like everybody benefits from everybody benefiting.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely in mind, but no, I think it was just that any follower on the account would just be a new eyeball that I could send my business name to. But you're not going to get eyeballs without content. And
Right.
so it was really mutually beneficial to go to these businesses and say, hey, what's your best cup of coffee? And, what's your hot seller when it's graduation time? And, oh, you have these college branded, bags, whatever it was. So then that's more things that we can put out there. And then that's more engagement, helps the business, which helps us to be, to have that freedom to come back to them and say, hey, what else can we show? Yeah. So I think when we hit 10,000, we were like, what? Like, this is a big deal. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was because of Christmas content. Because Grapevine it's the Christmas capital of Texas. And people come from all over
Hmm.
to come. Well, I don't know. I don't know how long that's been going on, but yeah, COVID kind of changed things and reset everything. But yeah, Christmas content kind of pushed us over that 10,000 follower mark. And that felt really, really big. And then
Hmm.
if I remember correctly, there was a tornado the following spring.
Oh yeah.
So that would have been 2023. A tornado came through Grapevine and hit a middle school and hit a car wash and whatever. So the thing about the Dallas television, which also radio, newspaper, the local media market, the DFW area is so huge that there's only you can't tell every story, right? So
Hmm.
people in Hazlitt might be listening for a story from their town when there's severe weather, and people in Waxahachie might be listening. It's this huge, huge market. And so with the Grapevine Edit being, we have a lot of local followers. My husband actually, he was at his job and he just went into news mode. And so I was covering what I could cover, like we know how to interpret information that's coming from different official
Yeah.
sources and weather, and like we just speak the news language. And so that day we were able to really just kind of be not the voice, be the distribution for what's happening in Grapevine, because people only
Hmm.
want to know what is happening at Grapevine Middle School, not,
Yeah.
what's happening at DFW Airport or whatever. So we were able to disperse all that information, and really, I think we garnered a lot of trust with that, and that also followers. But that sort of kind of tipped things to being more of a journalistic, like, media entity versus just like entertainment, local
Yeah.
entertainment. So
Well, how did you get, like, you said you became a trusted source, and specifically with the tornado and then the middle school, and I know there was a car wash in Sam's as well. So how were people just coming forthright to you to say, "Hey, can I share what's going on?" Or were you reaching out to the middle school to say, "Hey, we want to cover this. Do you have people that are willing to share a story?" Kind of how did all that work?
yeah, gosh, well, people, when somebody has information, they want somebody to tell. Same
Mhm.
thing when we receive gossip with our friends or something. It's a little hard to hold on to information. And so who are people going to tell, right? So people were reaching out to us to share stuff. We live here, we work here, I'm driving up and down the streets. My husband was at work, so he was doing more of like information that was available, online and official weather and stuff like that. He has worked in the local media for, 20 whatever years. So that was pretty easy for him. And then I was out, and we have a child in the public school system. And so we were getting constant alerts from the school, so we just had that information coming to us pretty
Mm.
much, and then combining it with the official, press releases and stuff like that. So, but we were able to only tell Grapevine's story. And so
Mm.
people kept coming to us that day. People were sharing our posts, and it was going everywhere because they just wanted the Grapevine story. And so that kind of became, yeah, that was how that started, I guess. And we've
Yeah.
had other opportunities to do stuff like that. We really try to keep it lighthearted, but there are stories to tell. And so we
Yeah.
we try to tell them.
Well, even like and I know sometimes you'll add in like South Lake because it's still in the neighborhood too, but just like the current at the time of this recording, there's a lot going on with the school districts and what's going on with that. And so being able to share that information, and then, man, sometimes when you read those comments, that's why you're
Yeah.
like, try to keep it peaceful, just sharing the information. But anyway, something I'm curious to know too, when you guys first started, and it doesn't have to be like I guess it could be when you were meeting with the businesses on Main Street or just reaching out to other businesses or just for local stories. A lot of times, like, people listening to this might be at the beginning stages of trying to start something themselves, whether it's
Hmm.
huge or small, whatever that may be. Hearing no is really hard. And so that can prevent them from moving forward. So when you were in whatever stage, really, even now, if you hear no, I'd love to hear if there is a scenario where you reached out to a company or a business and you would hear no, and then kind of what did you do to push forward with that?
I guess a lot of people would just ignore us, or so with my photography business, I'm really like hands on. I got to get you on the phone. I want face to face. I want that relationship. With the Grapevine Edit, it's more like, whatever. Here's a message. If you reply to it, you reply to it. If you don't, you don't. I'm a lot more like removed from it. But I'm trying to remember. I don't think we would have had. There are certain businesses that we've been like, we want to get inside that company, like some nationally known brand that's headquartered in Grapevine, like, we want to get inside that building and show people what it looks like or whatever. But it's more of a personal goal, and not so much rejection in that way. There was a time I had an intern one summer, and number one, I wanted her to get out of her shell a little bit. And number two, we had never featured this one particular store in Grapevine because it just hadn't really worked out. And so I sent her down there and I was like, just tell, show them the account. Cause we do that a lot. Like if I go up to a table at a bar or something, I show them the account and say, do you guys follow that? Okay. Can I take your picture? But you got to kind of show them what it is first. Anyway, so I said, show them the account. That business was really rude to her and
Oh,
she left really upset. And sorry, like we still have never featured that business. And I think it's under new ownership and that's fine, like whatever. And it's not
yeah.
spiteful. It's just like, if you're not interested in what we have to offer, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. I'm a lot more passionate about my photography business.
Hmm.
And so I could tell you a million examples of rejection there, but I'm not really passionate about the Grapevine edit, which sounds weird. I like it. I'm proud of
Hmm.
it, but I'm not precious about it at all. So I don't care that the captions are hard to read sometimes with too many emojis because we use AI to write our captions. Like I'm not precious about it, which has helped it grow, but I'm a lot more emotionally like invested in my photography business. So yeah.
Wow, I mean, I can see that. It makes sense because like your photography is your art, is your creation, it's everything. But also, the edit too is like it's still stuff coming in, but that's so funny to hear with that. And it's cool though
Yeah, I could
because
walk away tomorrow. I don't
and
care
be fine.
from yeah, it's cool. It's been great. It's a
We
good
will
family
not be
activity.
fine. The citizens will not be fine. Think about us.
I will. I do.
We
I
need
would
you.
burn too many bridges.
Okay, I'm curious to know too, and we're getting closer to the end, but a few more questions that I'd love to know. When you started to see the momentum kick up with the Grapevine edit, how soon did that correlate with your photography business as far as business started to, like someone said, hey, I saw you from the Grapevine edit, or you're the Grapevine edit person?
I think it was more gradual because I think it was just gradual brand recognition and
Uh-huh.
then also trust and then also being that hyper local thing of
Yeah.
like, oh, you're the Grapevine Edit. Well, that means you're in my town and you know, you're available. Yeah. So it was a lot more brand recognition. People do assume that I am a photographer, like what's the word? Can't remember what the word is. Anyway, a photographer who is completely like digital, all inclusive, whatever.
Hmm.
And so that's hard. People get sticker shock when they have a conversation with me. So I do have to have a lot of conversations because there's just so many photographers out there that are structured differently. But I have a few things that I do that are just kind of more available to everybody. I have Santa come to my studio every year, and this year I had 50 families in 5 hours.
Wow.
So that is 100% advertised on the Grapevine edit. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
those are return clients, but I think that that's how they found out about it to begin with. I teach summer camps. I teach photography in the summers, and that a lot of that advertising, a lot of those people come in because it's a little more self-explanatory. Here's a photography camp in downtown Grapevine. I would like
Yeah.
to send my child there. That's a little easier to advertise. It's a little harder, or I haven't figured out a way, or maybe I've been too precious about it. I haven't really figured out a way to explain, to educate the Grapevine Edit audience on how Laura Kellerman's studio works,
Hmm.
on how I'm producing artwork that's meant to be displayed for generations. I just haven't really, I don't know if I've had time or I've been too shy or I've something. That's a block that I'm going to have to get over in the new year. we have to, I'm going to have to hire somebody to help me with both businesses next year. And I think that'll be something that kind of, once all of the nitty gritty comes off of my plate, I think I'll be able to get a little more strategic in
Hmm.
sort of educating the Grapevine Edit audience on me and what I do. But for now, it's just more like brand recognition and that trust of being a you know, local person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You shared with me too that your faith is really important for you in your photography and your business overall. I'd love to hear why it's so important and how that plays into the work that you do every day.
Yeah, I guess I've just always known God's presence in my life and I've seen it. I saw it in my parents' lives, like just sort of their trust and their generosity would be repaid in ways that was like my mom was always like pointing out like, "Oh, hey, I got this cool thing." And then she would kind of point out like, "Well, where was God's hand in that?" It's like I see how it works. And so I've always kind of been able to look back in my life. There's a spiritual leader named Kiara Lubick who had written I've read a lot of her stuff. She died like 20 years ago, but she had a concept and imagery of the golden thread. So if like your life is a tapestry with all these beautiful scenes all over it, this huge tapestry, you can kind of look and see where does the golden thread go through. And so that's kind of how I picture like God's plan for my life is if I kind of stay with that golden thread, all this stuff flourishes around it and creates this beautiful tapestry. And so that expression just stays with me. And so I can kind of like look at the golden thread of like, why did I end up in Shreveport and why did we spend 2 years in Dallas, Fort Worth? Well, one of my parents and one of Austin's parents got really ill at that time, and we were close
Mm,
by and we could help out with that. And then why did we end up in Abilene, Texas? Well, we got the most beautiful creature in the world
yeah.
was waiting for us there. And then why did we end up in Little Rock? And then because it's kind of random, moving to Arkansas, what? That doesn't make any sense. We made lifelong friendships that are so invaluable. And then ending back here, like there's just so many ways of like, if we trust God in the little moments, like building up those muscles, if I like do what God wants me to do right now at 4:30 in the afternoon, then it's a little easier to do what God wants me to do tomorrow when there's a hard decision to make. And then these huge decisions, like, so it's sort of like just trusting, like zooming out, looking at the golden thread, and then just kind of trying to see what God wants from me in every moment so that I can trust the big picture. So
Mhm.
I'm not good at it, but at least I try to be aware of it. So
Yeah. And I love too how you said that your mom would say, okay, well, how did God get you here? So it's so good to be able to look back and to reflect and see like God's hand really is in everything and the intricacies of what's going on in our life to get us to where we are. And then even to however many more years that we do get to have to see like, we don't even know what we're doing is
right,
developed for in the future. So
right.
yeah, I think that's amazing and super important. So okay, I'm gonna scoot down with my questions because we're running out of time. So I'm gonna tie in my last two questions with you, and I would love to hear just what you have to say. So okay, do you have time for my last one, and then I have
Yeah.
like one. We can make it
I
quick.
just have to leave by like 4:50, 4:45,
Okay.
4:50.
We'll be good with that. So the thing that I'm curious to know, because you said, like with the Grapevine edit, you're like, if it was gone tomorrow, it would be fine. And like I've deemed you
It's
as the
true.
reliable. It's so funny. And what's so funny about that too is like people crave for the followership and crave for the attention. And I love that like you're getting that attention and you would be
Well, if you look at
okay.
the account, my face isn't really ever on it.
Yeah.
House, the inside of my house, that was kind of the thing when my husband came to me and said, should we do this account? Yeah, if we're not on it. Like I don't want it about me. That's
Yeah.
like horrifying to me. So yeah, even when the term like influencer or whatever, like I get that the account influences on a local level,
Yeah.
but it's not about me. I don't,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just not interested in being a face of, yeah.
Yeah. I love that humility. I think that's awesome. And what's cool is that you really are the reliable source for Grapevine. And it's neat too, because for anyone listening that is not from Grapevine, because we've got a lot from all over, but like here locally, whenever anybody's like, did you hear this happen? Well, did the Grapevine edit post about it? Or go look at the
We
Grapevine
hear
edit. What
that
did
when we're out in public and we just ignore it. We're like,
it? Like, yes, they did, but
oh, yeah, that's interesting.
yeah.
You'll never know that we're sitting right in front of you at this football game.
So, okay, well, this question, I mean, may know the answer based on just kind of how you already responded. So, knowing that you created this, you and your husband, and that you are the news source, how does that really impact your life and knowing the ability to create kind of these amazing, incredible things? And you can also use that for your photography too, because your photography is also phenomenal.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, I'm glad that there is a lot of, because I'm not young, there's a lot of maturity. Well, I guess I'm relatively young, but
You're more than your
we
age.
have, yeah, yeah, exactly. We have a lot of maturity and a lot of journalism behind us, right?
Yeah.
And so we understand. I've gone to so many conferences on ethics and like that kind of stuff is a little bit second nature. And that's the beauty of my husband believing in me so much that he helps me a ton with this side hustle because he also has that sort of training, and then we have the maturity as well, so that we can really zoom out and say, like, okay, we're not going to get involved in this situation, or, we're really going to tackle this. We're going to confirm our source, or not confirm our sources, but confirm information with a third party, like we're going to follow those principles. But guess what? It's my business. And so I can delete negative comments if I want. I can avoid a story that I don't want to cover. I
Mm-hmm.
can, hear that something bad is going to go down at this parade, and I can say, well, then we're not headed there. And, I don't want to draw
Mm-hmm.
any attention. And so there's a lot of power in going, I never, we're not publicly funded or anything, like
Yeah.
we try to keep things really chill, really neutral. We go into journalism mode when we need to. But then I have a lot of, you were talking about this local school board issue that was really difficult for our community to go through recently, still going through. And I have so many text messages and DMs and stuff from people, cover it from this angle, cover it from this angle. We're like, you know what? We're going to pass the information along
Mm-hmm.
that's readily available. People need it to come from us because we're kind of a hub, but we're not gonna tell this story from this angle and tell this story from this angle. We're just not gonna do it because,
Mm-hmm.
number one, my family doesn't have the capacity to deal with the feedback from that.
Yeah.
Like, and number two, like, I'm just tired. I just don't like, I don't want to be part of the noise. I don't want the clicks. I don't want, clicks literally are pennies in our bank account. Like, you can see when a story goes crazy, it's financially, like, you can see a direct financial benefit for it when the platform is paying you. And I'm not interested. I'm not interested in making $12 off of this thing that upset somebody. And so there's a lot of power in, like, I know that I'm coming from a mature ethical place, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm also autonomous here. So, I can step back when I want to.
Yeah, and the really neat thing about it too is because it is your creation, it is your account, it is your business, that you even just saying like I don't have to come to it with an angle in mind when so many news sources now do have angles. And so you're just stating the facts. And I think that's part of the reason why so many people do love to follow along is that you're providing the facts, you're providing the information, and we're not seeing any type of bias. We'll could read the comments, but that's not you, and that's completely separate. So I think that's really cool. And the maturity is huge when it's hard to find a lot often these days. Well, Laura, so part of the reason I really wanted to interview you was because well, I love that you have the journalism background. I love that you jumped into photography, and then even hearing your story where when you were in Little Rock that you kind of, partnered or worked alongside, whatever verbiage you want to use with that, with the photographer in Little Rock. And so then helped come up with that business plan. And then when you moved here, it's like really no, it's under your own name, it's your studio, creating that. And that takes a lot of work. That's really scary and it's hard. And then you with your husband create the Grapevine Edit, which brings back and you with your photography you were marrying the journalism aspect as well, and then the Grapevine Edit is really bringing out this old passion, this creativity. Yes, photography is doing the creativity as well, but it's still different. And so providing that so that you could help your business grow. And it's just kind of having this mindset of like, what can I do? I'm not going to let something difficult stop me. Now I'm paying this rent. And the whole podcast is about being more than your age, being more than a life situation and circumstance, and not letting whether that number is what's getting to us and bothering us. Like, we're getting older and that's just a fact. And so we can let that annoy us and not do the things that we want to do, or we can just realize, okay, it's part of life and I'm going to still chase after the things that I want to do. And so I'd love to ask you my last question that I ask all of my guests. So it's really hard sometimes when you are in a tough life circumstance, starting a business, or you're just viewing your age to feel limited or blocked to pursue a dream or goal that you want to. And so if you could encourage that one woman who does feel blocked or limited to pursue a dream or goal based on her age or life circumstance, what would you say to her?
Gosh, I think I would say you've got to find somebody who gets it, because you just get so much decision fatigue when you're trying to start a business and running a business, and it's just so isolating. You're not sitting with a bunch of cubicles in a big newsroom, but so you've got to find somebody who understands or who is also doing their own business and throw ideas at that. I mean, I don't know if that's possible for everybody, but if I look back, that's the luck that I have had, is to have these people in my life that I've been able to like bounce everything off and vent to, because there's a lot of venting that needs to be done with the small business. Or I don't know if it needs to be done, but it's certainly
It
helpful to
helps.
me. It helps. And if there's nobody around you, it's so easy to feel like you're going to give up because you can't bounce ideas off. You can't, or a lot of times, how you just talk through something. And even if the other person is just listening and they're not saying anything, you've kind of like come to a conclusion on your own, just talking
Hmm.
through it. So having somebody that believes in you, whether they know a lot about what you're saying or not, but just sort of having that like a friendship or a partner or a networking group, or I don't know, I don't love networking groups necessarily for myself, but yeah, I don't think I would have been able to do any of it if I didn't have people that I could bounce ideas off of,
Hmm.
or who could talk me down from a crazy idea or something,
Yeah.
or you know, like my husband saying like, okay, that's a great pie in the sky. Let's be practical about it. Or
Hmm.
another friend saying like, well, why can't you do it this way? Yeah, do it that way if you feel like you need to do it that way. So yeah, if that would be my wish for every woman who's trying to do something risky, is you've got to have a community around you. But that's not easy to find. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I would hope that people look for it in unexpected places too, of
Hmm.
those kind of sounding boards, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, it's very important. I also like within your story too that you with your photography, and then to go back to like when you started the Grapevine Edit, meeting the businesses. There's a lot of face to face. There's
Hmm.
not so much just like computer email. That's a lot easier to do that, and that still needs to happen. But there's that relationship building aspect that I think that has. I mean, I'm assuming has really helped with what you've done. Like that's a big takeaway from what I'm listening to you as well. It's just that interpersonal interaction is really important, that face to face. And so, well, Laura, I appreciate you taking the time today. I'd love for you to just share where people can find you and your website. We mentioned you're on Main Street, or slightly off of Main Street in Grapevine, Laura Kellerman studio. But tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, my website is laurakellerman.com, and my own Instagram, which gets completely neglected, is at laura.kellerman. And then the Grapevine Edit is where it's pretty easy to find. It's at the Grapevine Edit. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, I will put all of that in the show notes. So, Laura Kellerman, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing a part of your story. I really appreciate it. So, thank you for joining me today on the More Than Your Age podcast.
Yeah, thank you for giving women this platform and this opportunity to listen to each other, because we need each other.
We do. Absolutely. Thank you. If you were encouraged by today's episode, like and subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. You can find me on all of the socials at More Than Your Age. Keep striving for your goals, live fully, and we'll catch you next time on the More Than Your Age podcast.